Hello, everyone. I'm your host, Sully, and we got another lovely guest here. We got Travis Bow of Real Comics Heroes.
Hello
Welcome.
there.
Hello. Welcome in back.
Yeah, it's been a while.
It's been too long. We need you on here more often. But thinking of some different movies that have become comics or book adaptations or tie-ins or even video games, I just wanted to kind of just see about ones that had kind of just transition into another medium. Anything from Snake Plissken to the Shield to any other kind of thing that you're just like, wow, why didn't they make more? That'd be the best way to continue the saga instead of try and get an actor back who doesn't want to do it, or filmmakers have since moved on. I'm still digging the show Real Comic Heroes because you guys cover everything from
thanks
movies that became comics down the road, like RoboCop and Star Trek, to the various ones that everyone forgets were based on a comic because they did so well, like the Rocketeer and all the different Captain Americas and Punishers have been fun because, again, people seem to, even in the snobby cinema age, you had to remind people, hey, they didn't get it right the first time.
For sure.
You could still enjoy some of the cheese or just even seeing that. But I mean, the evolution of it is just intriguing.
Yeah, I think at the time we created a list of like specifically
master list
the master list of comic book movies. And there was like a big gap, between like our first episode was Superman and the Mole Men, and then there was kind of a gap until what would it have been?
I mean,
like 70 something. And then we were like, well, what if we throw in James Bond and then we throw in, Planet of the Apes? Like we did a lot of Bond and Planet of the Apes for a long time in between there. And of course, with those properties, they didn't start as comics, but like most things on our list, they eventually became comics. So that kind of, it works in our favor. Like I think everything that we have covered on the list, and then we added stuff like Indiana Jones and Star Trek and stuff like that, which of course have been adapted into comics as well. Yeah. I think the only thing we have covered that hasn't been made a comic, we randomly kind of threw Inner Space in there.
Right.
We were in the in the 80s, and actually the guest on that episode is a friend of mine. He said, can I come and talk about Inner Space with you guys? So we just did it. I mean,
I mean, it very well could continue in a comic. You never know.
Yeah, it hasn't been done yet.
You have Nido on quite a lot and Chris Maverick, but I also like the character reviews actually making sense of the intent and how the character changed based on who was illustrating or writing them.
That was a fun series to do. I'm glad we looked at that list of 100 of the top 100, comic book heroes. Of course, like the list itself came out from IGN like 10 years ago, so it's out of date, but we used it basically as a rough guide.
The Crow, the Spawn one was great, but even the Steel and Vampirella ones were also fun. Jurassic Park, but they were intriguing in that you're actually trying to kind of see how too much cheesiness might not be the best thing, or but even also giving the filmmaker a bit of a voice. What were they thinking, good or bad? And that's why we got what we got. And I'm sure you'll do plenty more Ninja Turtles because we got a few more coming out. It's
funny, like the past couple of years I've just honestly, since Endgame came out, I have been so checked out from most comic book movies. I mean, I haven't seen Ant-Man yet. It took me forever to see, Wakanda Forever. Like I'm so like, Endgame left me so satisfied that I'm no longer like I'll get to all this stuff when I get to it, or
just give you a breather 1 year where they're not coming out with 3 different ones, and then you can catch up.
I had to ask my friends yesterday, I think, like when does Guardians 3 come out, and when does Spider-Verse 2 come out? It's like I want to see those, and I'll definitely see those in theater, but not paying attention. I'm not watching trailers, any of that stuff. Like I'm not anticipating the stuff
And they do give
like I
so
used
much of
to.
it away.
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, I've quit with trailers altogether.
And then there's the
Just
ones who are like, I know the movie, I saw the trailer. I'm like, no, you didn't.
yeah.
A lot could change.
Yeah. Yeah. Marvel's proved that just because we show it to you in a trailer doesn't mean you're going to see it in the movie.
The Deadpool ones especially is like those are exclusively in the trailer. That's why they're funny, because the trailer is kind of a character.
Yeah.
And then even seeing, I mean, now we're having to even kind of get even more with the times on how like filmmakers can still at a moment's notice like drop from a project or get fired by a new vice president of content. You never know what you're getting. It's not like with some of these other 80s and 90s movies, like what you just dissected with the City of Angels. It was interesting. Like, well, if there's a cut out there, it might still be a while by Severin or Shout Factory to remaster.
Oh, sure. Yeah, that's what I like. When Flash comes out, I don't plan to see it because DC is. I've lost all faith in DC. with that era of movies. I mean, and I've enjoyed most of them. Now. Yeah, I've enjoyed most of them, but like I don't want to see that I don't want to see Ezra Miller as the Flash anytime soon. So I'm not. And
I did hear some
you
rumors.
threw Batman in it, but
I've heard some rumors that they want to make a profit, but they want it to not be good enough to where they don't have to do the sequel. And this is
there's no way they'll do.
Exactly. It's like Jonathan Majors. It's just one of those. Is like he became an instant star, and now we got this very uncomfortable scandal to where now we're having to look at ourselves in the mirror. It's like this is more than just a Bill Shatner or a Prince, the being over the top. Is now it's someone is like, well, at least they played a villain on screen, so I don't have to worry about it too much.
Yeah, you're not building a franchise on, and Kang is so recastable. He's a time traveling villain. Like, who cares what he looks like? So
you could do a Doctor Who. That is true. With many of these characters, we're having to realize it really doesn't matter who portrays it. It can be a James Bond, Sherlock Holmes element, where if you like the actor, they'll do their damnedest. But it is.
I mean, they recast. They replaced Terrence Howard with
Don Cheadle. Yeah,
I mean, there's precedence for recasting in the MCU. So
I mean, I don't know if Tom Cruise said something offensive in Mission Impossible. You could easily have him using a different disguise that he never takes off.
Right. Yeah, this mask that I just put on is somehow stuck to my face from now on, and I look like Bradley Cooper for the rest of my
there you go. Bradley Cooper's a good example. Do you believe that one constant rumor I'm hearing with the upcoming Blade is that he might be the son of Wesley Snipes' Blade?
Oh, I have not heard that.
Yeah, no, I think it's just people venting, just getting too cute, or saying I could write for TV. But I'd love to get your take on it because everyone's doing kind of the negative press, and I don't know how much of it is just clickbait. Oh, it's an R-rated movie. They don't do well, even though we've proven that's not true.
Yeah. Oh yeah, they can totally do an R-rated Blade.
Deadpool 3 is gonna be R-rated for God's sakes.
Right.
But
I don't hate that idea because I don't hate the idea of them then rolling this Blade franchise into the MCU and making it,
along with
officially
Deadpool.
Making it part of it going forward. But I'm totally also okay with a clean slate. Start brand new. You don't have to then treat everything that happened in those movies as canon, So
it can be loose, like Kevin Conroy's Batman in animation. It's like, well, he's playing it, but we'll let you fill in the dots and what timeline this is.
I think I'm leaning more towards I'd rather they started fresh and made this Blade a brand new version. And if he wants to have been running around in the shadows, be very appropriately for the last 30 years operating as a vampire hunter, sure, but he doesn't have to have been either the son of Blade and And those, maybe just let those movies lie. I don't know.
Okay, no, that's fine because I mean, we don't know. All everyone
Yeah.
seems to be doing is just leaning hard into, oh, can you believe a director got fired? I'm like, yes, it
Yeah.
happens all the time.
Yeah.
It and it's not necessarily unpleasant. Like the
Yeah.
angle you're taking, it could easily have been a
Right.
misunderstanding, or maybe it needed 10 million more.
Sure.
I
Um,
I don't know.
I mean, and it's happened in the MCU. I mean, Edgar Wright was on Ant-Man for
You're right.
a long time until he wasn't. And then, you got, was it Scott Derrickson stepped down, and we got Sam Raimi for Doctor
Mm-hmm.
Strange too. So
Yep.
it's happened. It's not like not unprecedented, but
Yeah.
because I think because Warner Brothers and DC are so
At odds
uh
with each other.
well, like now they're kind of known for everything keeps falling off the tracks. And so any opportunity, I think, to make it look like Marvel is now, oh, there's shakeups, and they're, I don't know if their future looks too great, or I think
Yep.
it's a little bit of that. It's just clickbaity headlines, and oh no, there's, like years ago when, oh no, there's reshoots. That means trouble. It's like, no, reshoots happen all the time. They're just,
Exactly. It doesn't even have to be anything that was planned. It could have been the oldest trick in the book, weather, or just
yeah,
something's off. Everything else looks good,
yeah,
but we gotta light it up one more time. Just get a little extra
right,
B-roll.
yeah.
And this is why I like your show, because you do like to look at the constructiveness of it, and you try to say as many nice things as you can before you get to the end of it, where you're just like,
Yeah.
and I think it's a misfire because
Yeah.
they didn't try to make it concise enough, or they took out all the highlights of the comic, but they didn't transition
Hmm.
it all together.
Yeah.
Or it's fun as a popcorn movie, but it's only a name.
Yeah.
It,
Yeah.
it's not my Constantine. It's a fun movie, but it's not the
Sure.
comic book Constantine.
Mm.
But yeah, good guess too. And everyone, please check out his take on James Cameron's Spider-Man. And for whatever reason,
Oh.
I'm really surprised how many people don't know about that.
Oh, yeah. I mean, and it's not.
I knew about it when it
even
had
the.
Charlie Sheen, but I didn't know.
Mm,
Some people are still surprised. They're like, "No, he wanted Arnold as
right.
Darkhawk." I'm like, "Yes,
Yeah.
he
Yeah.
totally wanted Arnold."
Yeah. And I know that there is another script version, that is different than the one we ended up, script reading. That
Bound to
was
be.
kind of infamous, but yeah. There's like once he had Leonardo DiCaprio attached to be Peter Parker. Like there was a love scene included for between Spider-Man and Mary Jane, and jokes made about webbing like going off, things like that were added to that version. So
Nice. But no, great cast of characters, and you've had them on all the various Marvel minutes, and
yeah,
just and I applaud all those kinds of movies because I can't do that at all. I mean, unless you invite me and tell me here's your assignment, but like,
yeah,
it is a skill. It is really cool to just be able to see someone just take out any copy they have of a movie, even just on YouTube, just like go to the scene, analyze it, what's working, what's not quite there.
yeah. Well, I probably you're probably not aware. I am doing another movie by minute podcast.
Sweet.
I'm going to be doing Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves.
Ooh.
So if you have any love or hate for that movie, would be I'd love to get you on, for a chunk of minutes. And
they made an action figure of that Morgan Freeman character.
Oh yeah, yeah. And the play set was based off of the Return of the Jedi, Ewok Village, and
wait, what?
Yeah, the tree fort kind of play set was an Ewok Village. And
was Kenner still in business?
I mean, yeah, they were making superhero stuff, because Robin Hood, the Robin Hood figure is like a repainted Green Arrow figure with a new head, and then the Friar Tuck is a repainted Gamorrean guard from Return of the Jedi.
Wow.
Yeah.
De-green you and make you pale white.
Yeah. But
That's awesome. I'll take you up on that. That's a delight.
Right on.
Well, I enjoy the adventures.
Yeah.
So tonight's subject, yeah, it's just we just I'm sure there's plenty of other post revamped Blade comics. I just figured, we could just kind of look at the main post 90s 2000s ones, and it was just so wild, and it was really guffawing because with the entire Blade saga, as those who probably are already tired of hearing this tell, the character was a blaxploitation type in the 70s, got reinvented with the Wesley Snipes martial arts surprise hit. And then from that point on, they did want to change up the characters. I don't know if they did that with X-Men as much, with the black and stylish black costumes.
Yeah, I mean that was definitely more of a Matrix, reaction.
Yeah, it beat the Matrix by a year, but yeah, with this, basically Deacon Frost is like almost, tries to be resurrected. They don't really use Snipes' image, but they use his gal pal, and they then adapted some other stuff into Strange Tales. Then they did a Blade 2 adaptation, which is even funnier because it's got a David S. Goyer forward. And he's like, "You're probably confused. We're doing a comic based on a movie based on a comic."
Yeah.
Surprisingly, I was surprised at this comic how there wasn't as much foul language like you usually get in a Goyer script. That's how I know he's writing it. I'm just waiting for those Tarantino F-bombs, but
yeah, they still had to get it through Marvel, and then obviously then with the next one, the Night Stalking,
the Night Stalking, yes,
they weren't worried about language.
Not at all. So this one was wild. I'm sure those who have seen the Wikipedia article are probably not too surprised, but like this was one I read at a GameStop back in the day.
Okay.
And that's how I first read about it. It was just, they had used movie section. I don't even know why I opened up the case. I just wanted to see if the comic book idea was true. And sure enough, the comic was in there. I never read it. And I'm like, interesting. So
I'm not convinced that I don't have a copy of that, because I would have bought that DVD when it came out. I can't imagine that I bought a later version that didn't have the Night Stalking comic. It's got to be in there
somewhere.
Yeah. I looked in I catalog all my comics online, and I don't have it cataloged with my collection. But that's not to say that, if it's like a little mini comic that came in a DVD,
one more addict search,
I may not have thought, this will be on the database, but it is. And I looked it up. It's worth $10. So if you've got one floating around, you're $10 richer. So, but yeah, I probably have that little Night Stalking comic.
Very nice. Very nice. Oh man. So, were you already familiar with the Blade character before you got into the movies, or vice versa? The movies made you want to check out the comics?
So I definitely would have seen Blade for the first time on the 94 Spider-Man animated series. That would have been the first time I ever saw Blade.
That was a big deal.
And yeah. He had some fun guest stars in that show, Punisher and X-Men, Captain America.
Right. Doesn't Punisher like flash a badge and he hits someone with it instead of gunplay?
I don't know. It's been a while. But yeah. So I mean, I was tangentially aware of Blade, and I don't remember the marketing push leading up to this movie, but somehow I dragged my family to go see this in theater.
Wow.
In the, not like opening weekend or anything, and I think it was at the, what we always considered the 50-cent theater, because tickets were that cheap, because it was like a 3-month, after they came out kind of theater. So it's not like we saw it, right away or anything. But yeah, I took my family to see this, or got them to take me, and I remember really having fun with it, and they did not like it, and so it was like,
oh wow,
well, you guys didn't like that, it's like, Yeah, I mean, there was a lot more language than they were expecting, and it opens like the opening scene, like 2 minutes in, and you get Tracy Lords like kind of reaching for the guy's crotch, and then stuff like that. That I
Foul
think,
language. I'm gonna blow your
yeah,
fucking face off.
yeah,
I felt like they wanted to have more gore than other
mm,
underground kind of movies at that point, like Wishmaster or
mm,
Leprechaun. Only make it classier, like not campy or anything.
sure.
And
But yeah, I mean,
yeah,
so just it got into Blade. I mean, saying I got into Blade is not accurate. I mean, enjoyed the movie and then watched the following movies, but really, even to this point, like the comics that I read for this discussion were really the first Blade comics I'd ever read.
oh nice.
I'm sure that I've read. I'm sure he's popped up in a Spider-Man comic that I've read
Hmm.
before. Like he has to have. I have to have read some guest appearance of Blade sometime in the last 30 years. So, but no, I mean, these were like I said, these were the first Blade comics I'd ever really sat down and read, and um, I'm really glad that I did so that we can talk about them. But definitely did not enjoy most of them.
Yeah, I was really no. So that's kind of just seals the deal.
Yeah.
It's like I don't know if the what the selling numbers were on this, but it's
Mm,
just like because they kind of set up how they're trying to recreate the movie style. You kind of wish they kind of could have used more of Wesley Snipes's look,
mm.
but
Yeah,
altogether,
because
yeah, it felt like an
the
anthology.
yeah, and I think like Marvel. One thing to keep in mind, like when Blade comes out, the movie, it's not really being presented as like, oh, this is a Marvel movie.
Yeah,
There's definitely something in the opening credits about based on Marvel comics or something like that. I'm sure,
they filmed a Stan Lee
but
cameo as one of the cops at the opening crime scene, and they didn't use it.
oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah,
Well, that's
it was
cool.
one of those I always kind of wish they could have used it. I was
Yeah,
just
yeah,
like, I or at least release the deleted scene, and somehow that wasn't in there. I don't think, but
yeah. But like the Marvel movies that we know now, like this was not one of them for sure.
no,
This was
Blade
just
2 they used
a
the logo,
property.
but
Yeah.
that was it. That
Yeah. And so it's not as if the comic side of things they were concerned with, oh, now we have to make comics, we have to make the character seem like the Wesley Snipes version. They weren't really doing that then. I mean, probably not
Mhm.
until X-Men, and then was it whose X-Men run was it? They kind of Grant Morrison, I think, put him in black costumes to kind of match the movie,
I
and
think so.
I think it was, yeah, Grant Morrison, John Cassidy, I think. Um, and with Spider-Man, they didn't really need to change the costume that much, obviously. But yeah, I mean, to it's not as if they were worried about people going to see Blade in theater and then going to the comic book store and saying, "Show me more of this Blade." I mean, we have some
It definitely
comics
feels
you
like a
can,
compromise. I don't know
yeah,
why, but
yeah,
it kind of reads like that, and just the way that's illustrated, it kind of feels like it might have worked better as a Tales from the Crypt type of comic.
hmm,
But this is the late '90s, early 2000s, not
yeah,
the '50s pre-code.
yeah.
I
They definitely, I think, on the covers of this first Blade series, the 98, 99 Blade series, I think on the covers they were trying to match a little bit closer to what Snipes had going on.
The second
Even
issue,
like,
especially, I had seen that
yeah,
same one of
yeah,
him, two swords meleeing, but I
hmm,
thought that was just the official like profile on the Marvel site, not from
mm,
that just that one comic. So
yeah, yeah. But really, like the character in the pages, he's still wearing the green, shades that he's kind of famous for in the 70s.
which is wild.
Yeah. And really in the three issues of this 98 99 series, there's not a lot of Blade in them. I mean, it's they set up a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure we'll get into it and why he's not really a part of the story moving forward. But
yeah, I had trouble keeping some attention with this one. It was kind of
okay.
just more. It almost felt more confusing than some of the paperbacks that they released of certain comics, where you're
Mhm.
not sure if some segments were shortened over others, but I definitely
Yeah.
felt a little convoluted. And
Yeah. I thought it started off really strong. Like it opens with Blade in the swamp and he's like
yeah, and a
stalking
giant
some
vampire
vampires.
being
You know,
seductive. He
yeah, I
interrogates
dig
the
all
cop
that.
who
Yeah.
he interrogates in the movie. So that's like the first big connection, other than
Hmm.
I think it's Dominique is the gal pal of
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, yeah, it's like this one was so frustrating. These three issues because reading it and then at the
Having to
end
make
of
sense of it.
yeah, and then you get to the end of issue 3 and nothing's resolved. And then
Yeah.
so I go to the Wikipedia, to look at this, and it's like, oh yeah, it's a 6 issue series that was canceled after issue 3. It's like, oh well, that makes a lot of sense. Why
Yeah.
why they spend so much time kind of laying a lot of groundwork. But oh man, I wish they had at least thought, let's make sure whatever story we're able to tell, let's at least get a 3 issue story arc wrapped up, at least
Something.
one element. We can still have the big bad, the big villain,
Or at
long
least have a
running.
line where he says, I'll be coming back or something. Instead
Yeah.
of,
um
well, that's all folks. Wait, no.
you don't even get that. Yeah. um I mean, I don't know how you want to kind of if you want to
We just
go.
loosely, just
Okay.
any pros and cons. I'm kind of with you. I just the animation style is
Okay.
interesting, but it's
Yeah.
not
Yeah, I
the
thought.
most intriguing.
Sure. Yeah. No, I overall with the art thought, yeah, it's totally fine. Um, the thing I liked about this is that it sets him up in Louisiana. It
Yeah,
starts off, he does the little action scene opening up in the swamp with
cute
those
techno music.
vampires. Yeah, like that's totally fun. And then he goes back to his apartment or his office. Really cute scene where he's like watching police procedurals and whittling his own steaks. And I was like, I that was a surprise to me. I'm used to the Wesley Snipes, stoic guy who just has like silver medal steaks, and I'm not this guy who sits in his place, watches cop shows and carves his own wooden steaks. But I thought that
I
was
mean,
fun.
I guess it makes sense, but
Yeah.
I mean, there's several lines in both this and even the Blade 2 adaptation where they're like, they kind of make Batman references. Who is this
Yeah.
Batman? And it's like, well, it's kind of
Yeah.
silly and cute, but I get it.
Yeah. But I like where, I think he's interrupted, or, there's a knock at the door, and then now he has a client. Like this lady, Dominique Levant, shows up and hires him because apparently he puts out, classified ads in the paper or whatever, because he's like, hey, do you have a problem that, I think he like skirts around saying vampire hunter, but it's
Yeah.
it's it's coded, it's like, it's kind of like, if you have a problem that you're not quite sure how to handle, so yeah, she comes to him with this vampire problem, and right away I'm like, okay, great, this is a noir detective story. Awesome, that is
Yes.
great. I love that aspect of it, because now
Bogart.
we've got this, possible femme fatale, like she's hiring him to do this job, and maybe she's going to turn out to be you know a familiar, at the end. So like already I'm like, okay, I'm into this. This is
We're in.
great.
We're ready.
Yeah. And then they're like talking on his balcony, and he starts going into his origin story. And it's like, dude, why are you telling her all this backstory?
Yeah.
And like, you don't even know what the job is yet. She literally she hasn't been able to lay out what the problem is. So
That's where I was
um
confused a little too, because it didn't
yeah.
seem like he's really taken with her yet. He
Yeah.
kind of is. So then I'm like, did
Yeah.
I miss something? Did I read too quickly?
No, there's just so he lays out his whole backstory and then finally asks her about, okay, what's what's the problem? What do you need me for? And she starts laying out this story about, the restaurant she works for buys their produce from this one guy, and sometimes that guy eats at the restaurant, and one night he and his family were accosted by this pale guy, and it goes on and on. It's like, come on, you've got to find a more economic way to get to the point here. And then they've got this daughter who is a teenage mother, and like, so that I think is going somewhere. We never really get any resolution there, but
They could have
ultimately
done more car riding, kind of like in the movies, but
yeah.
Ludicrous.
Yeah, so I mean, you eventually, it's like you find out probably in issue 2 maybe, that the vampire that they're having a problem with is Morbius.
Yes.
I mean, that's great. It's a good guest star vampire that Blade has to deal with, and but it's like I think on the second issue, they're like, Blade is on the case and they're staking out this family.
It's a stakeout, get it?
Yeah. But they're posing as like, it's like Blade and Dominique are posing as a couple in love, like on a picnic or something, and they just happen
Even
to be.
Though he's shown to be so stone cold, so it's kind of a bizarre plan.
This was odd. Yeah, I would have rather just had Blade, sticking to the shadows, observing this family, and waiting for Morbius to show up. And it was just too like
Weird.
I don't believe that. Yeah, Blade. I mean, Blade from the movies would not take Karen, on a stakeout. Well, I mean, he takes her on this mission because she insists on going in their story, but it's not the same. Like, this is more, we'll pose as lovers. I don't know. It's bizarre.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm with you. It might have been probably better as an anthology, but it's kind of a 50-50 comic.
Yeah. I ended up right. I mean, I was so frustrated with this story. I ended up writing a 3-act structure of like, here's how you do this story in 3 issues and wrap up an entire arc. If you would, it's not long. I can just kind of hit the main beats. So like issue 1, you have Blade fighting the swamp vampires. Just basically just shorten what's already there. You don't need, as much.
Got too deep for its own good.
Yeah. And it just purely introduces Blade and what he does, like what his skills are, all that. So when he goes home, gets visited by Dominique. I would change her last name to Levant or to Desiree, because that's the family that Dominique is like concerned for. So just change her name or change the family's name. Either way, have her there hiring him to stop, Morbius, who's draining her sister charisma. Make the character her sister, and and then end the issue with, like in the actual issue, there's a vampire who's like kind of stalking Blade and
there's
Dominique from like
B-plots.
from like sure, you can kind of keep that, and that way it ends with an action beat where as soon as she hires Blade to go after this vampire, that's when they get attacked by another vampire. So it adds some like, okay, is someone trying to stop her from all this? And you don't really know, is the vampire attacking Blade or Dominique,
Yeah.
But basically keep issue 1 mostly the same, but condense everything and make sure that she presents all the information to Blade of like what she's hiring him for, Don't drag it out over 2 issues, And then you open issue 2 with a conclusion to that fight. He takes the case and then scopes out the situation with charisma, on his own, like I said, just stick to the shadows. He follows her. Maybe um he tracks her, because we see in the original version, like, she ends up going to an alley to score heroin. And like, this is like, the whole time, like, Dominique is concerned with, like, oh, she's looking more tired all the time. I think Morbius is draining her. So her concern
Probably.
is that
Yeah.
she's this victim of a vampire, but in reality, apparently she's dealing with a heroin addiction or something. And they point out a few times in the original version that, like, oh, she takes her baby for this walk and she's breastfeeding as she's walking. Well, I think the best way to fix that is you make the baby a baby vampire, and she's breastfeeding the baby, and that's draining her. So Morbius isn't the threat. Morbius is there because he knows she has a baby vampire, and he's trying to help her with this situation, get
Mhm.
the baby the help it needs or whatever, help this family. And now Blade knows, okay, Morbius isn't a threat. Maybe they fight, but then they realize they're both looking out for Charisma.
Mhm.
And then you start issue 3 with, like, them, finishing their fight and realizing, okay, we're both here for her. And then I would have her then get abducted by the ultimate villain of the story, which is this Ulysses Sojourner character that we barely meet.
Right.
Um, but I would have that group of vampires, like, maybe, you know, with pure uh born vampires. Maybe vampires can't give birth, so they have to use surrogate mothers. And so that's what Charisma is to them.
Because vamps are
They've
kind of like zombies, where
Yeah,
they can live and breathe, but they still don't have the most working organs or
right,
reproductive.
right.
No.
Um, so yeah, like, maybe they just find a young woman who's impressionable, maybe, or they're able to sway, and
Mhm.
finally they impregnate her, either, through, like, fertility means, like, no one has sex with her, but they use her as a surrogate mother, basically. And maybe she gives birth to the baby, and has a maternal instinct and wants to keep the baby. And so now she has vampires coming after her because they want their baby. They need
Yeah.
this. It's a
You can't
purebred,
say no to them.
yeah, yeah. So that's where, like, Morbius comes in. He's trying to protect her from all that, and Blade is caught in the middle because, like, there's a young mother here who needs protection, but there's a baby vampire here. What does Blade do with that? Does he, you know, that's the big moral question. Like, what do you do with a baby vampire? Um,
Yeah, they flirt with a
so
lot of things. It seems like, in the movie they didn't really show as much of his gentle side. They
yeah,
were mainly just kind of having him be kind of a Highlander Rambo type, for lack of a better
yeah,
comparison. It's just the quiet warrior. He's
yeah,
samurai, and here, yeah, they're having him pretty much do a retrieve, like an infiltrate and retrieve mission.
yeah. Um, But I mean, that's more or less how I would handle this, because in the version that's presented to us, she goes into this alley looking to score heroin. That's that comes out of nowhere. I don't need that.
Yeah.
Make her problem vampire related. So that's the frustrating part about this whole thing is it's a 6-issue story.
Hmm.
We get 3 of those issues. It's canceled. I don't know where any of this was going. So I might be hitting close to the mark of what they were doing, because there's definitely something going on with this baby.
I
Why
might just
why
say it's a
introduce
little
it?
convoluted. Some of it's
Yeah, it's
cool, but
just
then
yeah.
one you'll have a striking image, then you'll have just some, again, too many surprises that aren't the most
Yeah,
pleasant, to where you're
yeah,
just like, even in a gothicy horror way, I'm kind of just
yeah,
struggling to give it a passing grade.
yeah. Um,
Because I think the thing with Blade is it was fun because
mhm,
the vampires villains were kind of like the ones in Near Dark and Lost Boys, and then they,
yeah,
again, they created this dark, gritty world, and Goyer kind of used some of it in his Dark Knight screenplays for Nolan. And it's interesting too how so many people kind of struggle to recreate that exact kind of thing. Get someone who's done effects and editing work, making their directorial more mainstream work, and then blending practical with CGI effects. And I think the closest you might find for a Blade kind of thing might be, I guess, some of those Riddick movies, or maybe some of the Punishers. But yeah, Punisher is an interesting dilemma in that everyone seems to want to just go back to a Death Wish kind of formula.
We'll return after these messages.
Hello and welcome to Culture Shocked, the pop culture podcast brought to you by four aging millennials and our outdated opinions. Join us every Tuesday as we discuss movies, TV, games, and even music, new and old.
Dude, what do you think you're doing?
Are you seriously trying to record a promo without us right now?
Well, yeah?
Dude, you can't just do the promo by yourself. Who's gonna listen to that?
Yeah, and you probably haven't even told them that we're a pop culture podcast where we always agree on everything. For instance, the Sam Raimi trilogy, easily being the best of the Spider-Man movies.
No. But I think we can all agree that Jaws is a classical masterpiece.
Nope, don't like that. But we do all agree that the sequel trilogy of Star Wars is the best in the Skywalker saga, right, guys?
That comment is so ridiculous. I don't even know where to
Anyways, that'll do it from all of us here at Culture Shock. Thanks for listening.
Do you ever find yourself thinking about who would win in a fight between Goku and Superman? Hi, I'm James Gavsey, and on the Who Would Win show, me and my co-host Ray ignore anything important happening in the outside world and debate fictional battles between characters from comics, movies, and video games.
We got a new show every week, and almost always am I the winner.
Yeah, not true, Ray.
In the past, we've discussed such matches as Captain America versus Darth Vader, Solid Snake versus the Iron Giant, classic matchups like RoboCop versus Terminator, and even the Muppets versus Sesame Street.
That one was crazy. So if you're a fan of geek culture and love a spirited debate, check out the Who Would Win show wherever you get your podcasts, or check us out at whowouldwinshow.com.
We let things pile up in the DVR, we add them to our queues, we wait for the DVDs and Blu-rays. We time shift. The Time Shifters podcast. Sci-fi, horror, fantasy, superheroes, comedy, action, film, television, maybe some not-so-current events. Find us on iTunes or at timeshifterspodcast.com.
Cool thing about Blind Knowledge is we are in multiple countries. We are worldwide all across the globe. We are in the US, we are in the UK, we are in Canada, Germany, India, Japan. We're in Australia, y'all. BlindKnowledge.com. Now back to the feature presentation.
Dragon Ball Z, One Piece, Naruto, all things that we love, all manga that were originally published in the legendary magazine Weekly Shonen Jump.
But not every series can run for 300 chapters and have a hit anime. This is David.
This is Jordan.
We're the hosts of Shonen Flop. Each episode we look at manga that ran in Jump that didn't quite make it.
We discuss what it did wrong, what it did right, how the series could have turned itself around, and ultimately, was it a flop or not?
We're on all your favorite podcast apps, and you can find us at shonenflop.com.
Keep on flopping, floppers.
Oh.
Sure. Yeah.
And they struggle to kind of make the character stand out versus be a typical Taken Man on Fire type movie.
Yeah. Yeah. Not to get too deep down the Punisher rabbit hole, but it's like the Dolph Lundgren version, it might be the most accurate to like who the character really is. The Ray Stevenson version looks the part and I think plays a great Punisher. The Thomas Jane is probably he's probably the best actor. I mean, his version's different.
They really cut out so much from that movie.
Oh yeah,
it's like that would have made it be more of a fun Serpico Training Day movie had you kept in those supporting director's cut moments. But you take it out, it feels like you're trying too hard to speed to the finish line before we know anyone.
Yeah, it's like those Punisher movies they all kind of have the right ingredients, and if you could put them all into one Ball, you'd have an amazing Punisher saga or whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, of course, now we've got the what's John
Bernthal's show
version, and he is great. It's a more grounded, real world, just version.
I'm hoping
And
for the best for his return on the
Yeah.
upcoming Daredevil show. So
yeah. So, but anyways,
but
Blade.
yeah, with Blade, it seems like his image continually changes. Did you
Mhm.
ever play Ultimate Avengers 1 or 2?
I did, yes. I forgot about
it was
those
a
games.
RPG kind of fun,
Yeah.
click and hack and slash kind of game, and it was
Right.
interesting how Blade was not only featured on the cover, but
Yeah.
even just in the game itself, kind of like what these comics do, where they're looking kind of like the movie,
Yeah.
and then they're kind of going for more of a hip, like shut your mouth, chef kind of vibe stuff.
Sure.
Shut your mouth, and
And I don't mind like reading these 3 issues. I don't mind this version of Blade. He's definitely chattier, which you kind of need in a comic. It's hard to read a comic about a stoic character because it gets boring.
right. Even when they're
we've
not
already
trying
got
to
we've already got the Punisher. We don't need nothing but thought balloons for every character, or you know what I mean. Like I don't mind this
It's-
version of Blade who does talk to people and quips and
No, that's
so
a good point, because there's so
Yeah.
many things where it can be too much for its own good. Like, say, take your favorite 80s movie, for instance, and think of how if it had maybe 5 extra montages, that might be too repetitive.
Yeah.
Especially if it's a sports movie or a comedy.
Sure. Yeah.
And it's kind of the same here. Is like they're bright individuals. Well, I actually don't know that, but I have a feeling of where they're going and everything, and I'm a little invested. But like you say, it does kind of get a little distracting after a while. So
sure. Because this story is definitely not, really none of it has anything to do with the movie that would have just come out. The covers I think would have been the last thing that got done. So on the covers, he looks more like the Wesley Snipes character. I think that's just to get people who might be looking for a Blade comic, having seen the movie, they might go into a comic book store and see this guy on the cover and think, oh, okay, yeah, I'll get this because I like that movie. Then like the next version we see is way more, the Wesley Snipes Blade version. And I actually I looked up on there's a separate site where you can search for a character and you can find every appearance that they've been in.
Oh, sweet.
It's a great site. It's hard, it doesn't have a good website. It's if you search complete reading order, I think you'll find it, and it's a guy named Travis Stearns or Starnes or something like that.
That's so helpful. I see it. Complete Marvel reading order.
Okay. It's not a great site to navigate, but it's helpful. If you're looking for a character, it's helpful. So the next appearance after these 3 issues was Gambit number 4 from May of 99. And I read that issue, and that was my favorite Blade thing that I read in preparation for this. It was a good adventure with him and Gambit, and I mean, take or leave Gambit, as far as I'm concerned. But it was a fun, I think, adventure between these two, because as this comic establishes, New Orleans is now Blade's base of operations, and who else is he going to run into in New Orleans but Gambit? So, but it was a fun, just team up adventure. So, and he definitely he's got the Wesley Snipes look and for the most part personality kind of established in this one. So
I kind of almost got he almost looks like Tony Todd, almost kind of on the front
a little bit. Yeah.
Candyman vibe. But
yeah,
other than that, they pretty much are trying to definitely echo the movie a little more here.
For sure. And then after the Gambit 4, he would have appeared in Peter Parker Spider-Man number 7 and 8 from August of 99. And this is where he runs into Morbius again. Spider-Man's kind of dealing with a vampire problem, and Blade shows up. So This I skimmed those issues and they're kind of good.
Well, and it's interesting how, like you say, is like it's very thick and it's not the easiest to get into at first, but it is so yeah. With this one, you really gotta be ready. You gotta make time for this one because
the next arc, yeah.
Well, I thought so at least just with the Strange Tales because it was just interesting.
Gotcha.
But yeah, I mean, just like you say, he does look more like the movie character.
Yeah.
And, it does kind of make your mind hurt after a while because like
Mm-hmm.
Morbius could have been in the sequels, but it probably wouldn't have been a good idea.
Yeah. And I want to say that there's a deleted scene on the first movie where at the very end he and Karen are like looking off across the rooftops, and I think they see a guy all dressed in black, and it's meant to be Morbius.
Yes.
Okay. I'm sure I've seen that. I'm I can't remember if it was on the. Yeah. I wouldn't have hated that. I think he would have worked in especially a Guillermo del Toro sequel featuring Morbius.
You would have thought he would have been right at home in the sequel.
Yeah.
Fighting for control from the other vampire cults who are in.
Oh man, you I mean, hell, just make Nomak, make him Morbius, or I'm sure you could blend Morbius and Nomak. I mean, that seems like a no-brainer,
Yeah.
But
I think many
and because Morbius appeared in the first arc story, whatever series that we talked about, and the movie just flat out establishes Blade has vampire-like powers, all their strengths, none of their weaknesses. That's a creation for the movie. And
interesting.
So Marvel
they didn't go by any text on that one. That's
no.
Cool.
Yeah, they created that for the movie, and then at this point they were like, okay, now we have this movie version of Blade who has powers, and the comic book version of Blade, he's just immune to vampire bites because his mother was bitten when she was pregnant with him. That gave him immunity to vampires, and that was it. That's the only power he had was not being affected by vampires. So he wasn't like the Daywalker. That didn't come around until the next set of comics we're going to talk about in a little bit. So they had to figure out, okay, how do we make him the movie version? How do we give him some powers? And in that Peter Parker Spider-Man number 7 and 8, when he goes to help Spider-Man deal with this vampire problem he's got in New York City, it's like there's a mob of vampires, and they have Morbius locked in a crate, and they unchain him or whatever. He gets loose, he kind of goes on a rampage, and eventually he bites Morbius, or Morbius bites Blade. So in the comics, Blade's, Daywalker, all of their strengths, none of their weaknesses kind of powers come from Morbius. So that's how they were able to make him in the comic more like, they had to make their comic book character more like their movie character who's based on the comic book. So, just kind of a fun little, weird set of circumstances that led to, of course, ultimately, like the years later, they retconned all of that, and it was something else. So I think they ended up retconning it more so that when Deacon Frost bit his mother, that did give him powers, and the Morbius thing was just it unlocked the powers, maybe, or something like that.
I think so. Yeah. But retconning, I mean, it's kind of like with the new Star Wars EU versus Legends. It's just interesting seeing everybody kind of trying to make everybody happy when you made some stuff different. Now you're changing it up again. Now you're doing something else. And do you think they'll, I mean, I see that there's one already this year called Daughter of Blade. Do you think
he's got a daughter now.
Experiment with the character a little more?
I think when we get Blade, I think he'll have powers. I think it'll mostly be super strength and speed and, all that. I like that the character has a thirst for blood. I actually think that it was a great decision on the filmmaker's part to make him like a vampire, to make him hate, hunt and kill the thing that he hates. And oh yeah, he kind of is one too, give that self-loathing kind of aspect to the character.
I like the self-loathing aspect because
Yeah.
like that is just, before this, didn't he like go on a murder spree before realizing somehow what he was?
Whistler says something to that effect. Like
Somehow
he
was
was
able to
living
tame him.
in alleys and he was feeding off the homeless and that sort of thing.
But yeah, definitely a self-loathing where he is just flat out just like,
Yeah.
I don't want to be this anymore.
Right. And I actually think that Snipes does a great job, especially in that first movie of portraying that. Like he tells Karen kind of his origin and, tells her like, this, basically that he hates himself because of what he is and all that. And yeah, I think he nails that aspect of the character.
Sweet.
Yeah.
So with this Blade 2 comic, do you feel like what's your biggest takeaway from it?
It's enjoyable, but ultimately it's kind of just a Cliff's Notes version of the movie. And like I in preparation for all this, I watched all 3 movies, and definitely like had not watched any of them in a long time. Definitely enjoyed
Wow.
rewatching Blade
Extra
2.
mile, I love it.
Yeah, I mean, hey, if the thing's worth doing, it's worth doing right. But yeah, I mean, this comic, this Blade 2, yeah, like I said, it's kind of just a real condensed. They really just hit the highlights. They don't change a whole lot. Like a couple scenes are maybe like smushed together and merged, but it's worth it's worth checking out. I guess I think I'd rather watch the movie.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. Movie anytime. But
Yeah.
compared to other comics, which literally seem to just want to extend certain scenes or add trivial information that might contradict an earlier screenplay or what have you, this one kind of just shows more of the world, I guess, a little more instead
little
of
bit, yeah.
just alternate takes on key moments in the movie or anything.
Yeah, it doesn't do that thing that novelizations do where they do expand on motivations and
this
scenes.
was it.
Yeah, it's like this is what you need to know for this story.
We're going inside the character's head because we got nothing else to work with.
Yeah. But
sometimes
yeah, I mean,
when they do that, it gives so much away to where I'm like, so now there's no suspense.
Yeah. There was one. Which issue was it? I think I read most of this stuff on the Marvel Unlimited app, but
badass.
For some of them, like the Night Stalking one, I had to go through alternate means, and the Blade 2 adaptation had to go through a different site. And so I ended up reading, even though I could have read that first issue that we talked about, I could have read it on Marvel Unlimited, but I think I ended up reading it on this other site, and they included all the like a Blade the movie tie-in kind of pages. Did you read all that? So it was like
yeah, I had so for those who read comics online, I do use a online like ad blocker because they are incessant. They will not stop up and up. And I did appreciate that you recommended that other site because I had seen it. It's so weird. Some of those comics were being uploaded from that site onto here.
Yeah, I did notice the taglines at the bottom were from the other. Yeah,
courtesy of Free Comics Online.
Yeah, but yeah, there was like a couple pages about the Blade movie, at the end of that Blade issue, and it just had some nice little like here are the characters, just some behind the scenes photos, that kind of stuff. So it's kind of cool, like to see stuff that you're not getting with Marvel Unlimited, and like the intro pages. I forgot that a lot of comics started with intro pages, and I miss that stuff. Like,
really fun.
Yeah. But anyways.
Yeah, no, I like you say, it's not required reading, but you would, the movie, hands down, it's just instantly rewatchable because it gets you in the mood. It promises more, delivers more, and then has its own special set of villains compared to the first one. And but yeah, this, I mean, I don't know how much of it is based on the novelization by Goyer, because this usually, much like the movies, he has a rather vocal dialogue. Sure. So I was just very surprised how there wasn't. You said it off air, but it's just interesting how I'm still just taken aback by it, because I had to kind of get used to that, because any other kind of Blade entity, there were even video games based on the movies, and they would go to town. They would have every other big boss cussing like a sailor at you. So it'd get distracting after a while to where you want to lower the volume.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure I read the Blade, the first movie novelization, because I have the strong memory of it ending with, like, how the first movie ends with him taking on a vampire, like in Russia, like he's the vampire is
totally unrelated, but
with a lady and he's about to bite her. In the novelization, that's Whistler. So it's like it sets up there that, oh, he's now hunting Whistler and this is where he finds him, or something like that, because I think the novelization does a better job of, like, that whole Whistler thing of him coming back in the second movie. Like, it really doesn't make sense. They do their best, I think, to explain it away, and they do include a lot of that stuff here in this Blade 2 adaptation.
Well, like you talked about before on your awesome episode of Star Trek First Contact, it was interesting how somehow, because he's the main character, we get to see this guy come back from the dead and avenge others. So it is kind of one of those other ones, like, but why was, other than this person being one of the supporting heroes, really significantly, why were they given a chance and everyone else, wasn't given a second opportunity? Instantly staked without any thoughts or questions. But it is the kind of logic where you're just like, it's too much, so I'm just gonna go on to what I do like next. Kudos to whoever sketched it. There's some very vibrant colors in here, almost as gruesome as the blood itself. That's very intriguing.
I dig the art in this Blade 2.
That's pretty much, if anything, if you want something just sexy, just read this.
And I noticed, like, a lot of the characters, they feel like a Mike Mignola-esque art.
I saw that on there, that he, like, did some of these comic designs. I couldn't believe it.
Okay. That doesn't surprise me.
But there is a Hellboy vibe, so it does make me wonder if he met them doing this, and someone said to Del Toro, hey, this needs to be your next adaptation.
Maybe. I'm not familiar with it.
He's apparently done some recently. Court from Cinema Psyops suggested I check out Mignola. Mignola was with all these other graphic artists and illustrators. They basically adapted some Clive Barker tells from his Nightbreed Hellraiser universe. So it's interesting how this guy has just continually, Mike has been doing all kinds of collabs, but it's so unusual, because usually once you get to a certain level, you only want to do this or that. And he seems to want to keep doing illustrations or coming up with ideas, and doesn't mind if he just puts his name on it and lets someone else take it away.
Right.
But I'm with you. Like, it is interesting how they reintroduced the whole vampire hunting game, and it almost reminds me of some of the Terminator comics, where some stuff they expand on, which for a movie it would just be too much. I don't want to say formulaic. It would be kind of over explaining. For a blockbuster.
Right.
Than it might allow. And in a comic, all you're looking at is just the art and the text, so it just works better in that format. Compared to what a miniseries could do, where it might be too long for its own good.
honestly, I kind of wish this Blade 2 had been 3 issues, just stretch it out a little bit, give me a couple more extended scenes, that sort of thing. But no, it's worth a read for sure.
Totally. Altogether, are there any famous names also attached to this that you're kind of recognizing, or from other Marvel entries?
Steve Gerber. I mean, he's
Steve Gerber. Okay.
He's a legend in Marvel, and he created Howard the Duck. He worked a lot on he did some Swamp Thing work in the 80s, and he's been all over comics for years and years.
Nice.
Tim Bradstreet did the cover. He did a great run of Punisher covers when Garth Ennis, his famous Punisher run.
Mm-hmm.
All those covers were done by Tim Bradstreet.
Yeah, I'm just interested that you bring up Bradstreet and Ennis. Ennis is kind of almost, I guess, kind of like what what's his name? Who did he's almost kind of like Frank Miller for Dark Horse almost. He takes all this gritty stuff and then he kind of literally lets it explode on screen.
Is Warren Ellis?
Yeah. With the no, I'm thinking Garth Ennis.
Okay.
Yeah. Did I say Warren Ellis? I didn't.
No, you said Ennis. I thought you were saying he was like Warren Ellis in the.
Oh yeah, no, sorry, yeah, no, Garth Ennis, yeah. But I mean, I didn't know if they were inspired by Frank Miller versus the other, or just similar.
Could be. Would not surprise me.
So I guess this brings us to the last one. This is like the last movie inspired comic, I guess. Blade. For now.
Which one? Which one are you talking about?
The Trinity tie-in.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah.
So for those who bought DVDs back in the day, I don't think it was with the giant pack, but it was definitely with some of the the main first run like DVD special edition. I think.
Even the cover says exclusive comic created specifically for the Blade Trinity DVD.
Yeah. It's just so weird though, because I don't think every edition of it carried that, unless I'm wrong.
I don't know.
Maybe there were used copies and they took the comic and threw the movie out.
Yeah.
But yeah, they don't really focus on doing so many of adapting the personas of Jessica Biel or Ryan Reynolds, but it is interesting how they're giving a different take on those two vampire hunters.
Yeah, I dig that this isn't a retelling of the movie. It's a precursor to the movie. So I actually really liked that aspect of it.
Because all you got besides that were the alternate endings where, hey, they're in a casino and the mob boss who owns the casino happens to be a vampire and they kick him out. And Ryan Reynolds does his usual ad-lib lines and Jessica Biel takes out her lightsaber weapon, but that was it.
Right.
And the TV show they did kind of didn't talk about him, surprisingly. It would have been an easy way to continue those characters, but like you say, it's not a retelling of the movie. It's kind of a side story.
Mm-hmm. No, I mean, this one was totally enjoyable. It was distracting because of the language. Reading a Marvel comic with F-bombs. I mean, it says on the cover, mature audiences and stuff. And I don't mind comics for a mature audience.
Fair game, but it does, the way it reads, it almost feels like like when someone does, I don't know, like I'm not good at writing poetry, for instance, but at least to my credit, I knew when to quit when in a writing class. So it did kind of read as maybe this needs a little more rework with how you're cursing, because it just feels like you're doing that just for the hell of it.
Yes, it felt very much that. But as far as the story goes, like I said, I dig that we get a backstory on Hannibal King. I kind of forgot. I mean, watching it, I was like, oh yeah, he was a vampire. I kind of had forgotten that until watching the movie.
He
And then
says in the opening narration, but you just forget it because you're just too busy looking at Ryan Reynolds.
I forgot that movie opened with Ryan Reynolds' narration, but
just
that's funny.
In the temple, they really modified even on the TNT version. So this is interesting. Whatever version you watch of a movie, what you remember versus what you don't remember.
Yeah.
But yeah, like you say, it's probably the biggest winner of this because it's its own side story. It actually characterizes maybe the characters better than even in the movie, which goes more for the stunts. So it's interesting how, I mean, they could have easily done a Blade 4 through 6 in comic book form, much like they did with all these Blade Runner tie-in novels.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Comics. So I mean, no relation. I was just I didn't even take that relation just because it had Blade. I just
sure.
This is the first world building thing I thought of. I mean, AVP is another one. I mentioned Terminator earlier. There's no telling what they could do with the character next, really. But I know there's fanfare for it out there since now Ryan Reynolds and Jessica Biel are mega star producers and actors.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know what they could do next, but I'm sure it'd be interesting.
For sure. I do definitely want to mention the art by is it Amanda Connor on this one?
I think so.
She teams up with Jimmy Palmiotti a lot. I think they're married. I don't remember if it's the two of them who are a couple or what, but yeah, she has a fun style, especially when she's drawing female characters. She just has a real cool style about her art that has gotten better over time. I mean, this is still a little early. It's like, yeah, it's good, but her stuff now is pretty incredible.
Cool.
It's funny reading through this on that other site. Like, there's a Constantine movie ad. There's a Batman Begins movie ad.
Yes,
it's like
talk retro.
Yeah. It's like you're advertising this for a Marvel comic book movie. It's kind of weird that you're allowing these other advertisers to,
It really was wild. It was. I wonder, is that the case now as much?
You would never see a Warner Brothers advertisement.
See a Wonder Woman ad in a Captain America comic movie tie-in.
Never.
No.
I mean, the back, like the ads that come in on the back, they're all for like New Line Cinema stuff, which that makes sense.
Oh, so that makes sense because that was a Warner Brothers. DC version, so
I don't know, but it's like it's
New Line. That makes sense because like this was New Line.
Well, yeah, but it's like the movies at the back are like New Line movies, like Snoop Dogg's Bones movie, Menace to Society 2. Like it's not, it's
more
some of like
just their DVD collection remasters as opposed to comic book blockbusters. Okay,
yeah, because I'm gonna see who put out.
I mean,
Constantine, Village Roadshow. Yeah, and Warner's. Yeah,
Lorenzo di Bonaventura. I think that was like the first major thing from his studio production company.
Yeah.
I did kind of always get kind of a Blade feel from Constantine, even though it's different, just similar kind of just mystical hunters showing up in the middle of nowhere.
Supernatural.
Yes. Ugh.
I dig that this story ends with Hannibal and Abigail like walking up the FBI steps to go retrieve Blade, where they come in the movie. So it's a good little, prequel for the movie.
It's a warm up. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, altogether, I'm with you. It's like there's a lot to like, there's a lot to not like, but it's interesting looking at the evolution of this character, and you kind of, I guess you could say maybe the character needs a little more love.
Yeah, I ended up reading the other Blade 1999 series that came out. Did you read any of those?
The Strange Tales.
No,
Okay.
because the first three that we talked about were the Strange Tales, like whatever.
Okay, shoot. So the
There was a
other one.
standalone 99. It was a 6-issue arc. It started with like a Blade number half that was like a Wizard magazine.
Okay, yes, the Wizard ones. Yeah, no, those.
Yeah, man,
those also kind of made me feel like there was more to it, and I must have.
That was the worst comic book run I've read in a long time. Those 6 issues plus the half, whatever.
I definitely was very confused.
So
by
terrible
that one, but
yeah, it's like
I didn't care for the artwork.
No, I didn't either. It felt too much like Howard Chaykin to me, and I hate Howard Chaykin's art. The art was all Bart's. The art and then the story was by Bart Sears, who I think what was his big thing was and a War. I think was his big like comic book thing he created in the 80s or something like that. It was like a Valiant comic.
Chaykin, did he do just a lot of just over the top political cartoons or?
Yeah, Chaykin, yeah, did that. He did what was he had a super patriotic character.
I know he did the Die Hard prequel.
Okay.
I like the artwork on that, but yeah, some of the other ones you're talking about, I'm seeing and I'm like, yeah, that's kind of a little cringeworthy.
Yeah. I forget what the name of that character is.
But he did some Batman ones, apparently.
Yeah. Yeah. But no, I did not care for that 99 series. It was like it's somehow like Shield has a supernatural division that they call Silver Eye, and like part of the team is made of vampires. And I read like the 6 issues, like I don't know what the story is. I don't know what anyone's motivation is. And then I finally
it definitely feels like a Cliff Notes.
Yeah. I read the whole thing, and then I go to Wikipedia just to see like what do they say is what happened in these issues. And it was like Blade teams up with some other vampire hunters, Makata and Moshi or something like that, to stop Shield from cloning vampires. Like, what? I did not get that at all. So
I was unsure if we had an incomplete comic or what.
I wish this had been the one that got canceled at 3 issues, and the other one got a chance to go the full 6 issues.
Totally. Because it's just very hard to. It's kind of like when you're watching a show, but you're suffering through it because it hasn't found its voice yet. It's like, okay, you got 2 hours before I press eject.
And that's
I'll give you all day, but that's it.
Right. That was the super frustrating thing with that first what ended up being a 3-issue story. Because if you green light a book, I mean, obviously they greenlit 6 issues. It probably sold very poorly, so they canceled it at 3. They weren't going to
give a second thought.
Yeah, because it financially it couldn't have been worth it to finish the story. Maybe they could have said, okay, we'll let you finish issue 4 and wrap up the story and put an end on it. Sometimes they'll do that, but still, it's like you got to pay for all that paper and all that ink and all that printing press. You got to.
Yeah, we didn't have
cost money and
as
if it's
much
not
Adobe
selling,
guys back then.
Yeah, so the frustrating part though is green lighting story that you can't wrap up. Like,
no,
like I said, issue 3 needs to wrap up something, and that story didn't wrap up anything. There were so many loose threads. Like I would have loved if that story or that series had continued and it was like a case of the week kind of
there you go
thing. Like every issue you read, Blade is doing the
vampire plagues the town.
Noir detective. Yeah, like give him a new case every time, and sometimes he's working for the bad guys. Sometimes he's working. He gets betrayed. Like you make it
would be fun. Maybe even have Whistler actually die again, and this time Whistler blends with Morbius or something like that. Just something where it's like, I'm gonna have to kill my mentor. And I don't want to do it, and I'm gonna have to just pucker up and just say
right.
Maybe have a return of the Dominic gal, because maybe using Bush Wright's persona. I wonder how much it would have cost to use Wesley Snipes' persona, because it seems like certain publishing always has this issue when you want to use someone's persona, but it's just too costly per printing.
I don't know. Definitely the
I know they did
likeness
did you ever see that goofy movie Warlock?
No.
Okay, just
the
horror comedy with Julian Sands.
Okay.
Who recently just went missing.
Yeah.
That it's a fun comic, and it really does echo a lot of that over the top kind of fun that a lot of those gothic horror fantasy action movies were doing in the 90s. But it's interesting how they did a good job, but they had to totally change the look of the title villain because they couldn't get Julian Sands' likeness. So I always find it interesting when you have to work around that, and how much can you do before it just feels like a totally different character, and you just use the name versus it's the character.
That's why I was always confused when as a kid watching the Ghostbusters cartoon. I was like, who's this blonde guy? Like, his name's Egon, but he doesn't look anything like Harold Ramis.
Yeah.
So.
Not Harold Ramis, yeah. I think I got even more annoyed when I found out all the horror stories about Ernie Hudson having to just continually audition. Like, man, it's like actors have a hell of a time just trying to come back to a certain role. I think, didn't they say Sigourney Weaver didn't even get considered for the video game? I'm like, man.
Oh, I don't know.
This is what the hell? I'm sure you could work something out.
Yeah.
Write a SAG low budget contract, something.
I think with this whole reading all these comics, it made me want to read some older Blade stuff. I want to read some of the early 90s, the Night Stalker stuff with him and Ghost Rider and Johnny Blaze and some of that stuff. I'd like to check out that 90. There's a 94 Blade series. I might check some of that out. I definitely want to
find those, but I kept seeing them get mentioned, so I was just like, oh, these are probably collector's items, so prepare to spend extra time on eBay.
Yeah. I definitely want to check out some of the 70s stuff, some of the Morbius stuff. And I meant to bring this up earlier, that when Morbius and Blade meet in issue 2 or whatever, in that comic, they act as if they've never seen each other before. And I looked it up, and their first meeting was 1974, 78, maybe. I mean, it was, they first meet Adventure into Fear number 24 from October of 1974. So I don't know why this comic treated it as if they'd never seen each other before.
Published out of order, probably TV aired dates got mixed up, I guess.
I mean, got a 20-year gap.
I don't know how you give that up, but it seems like it happens.
I guess you don't have the internet, so you can't maybe easily reference hey, have these characters ever met? You'd have
to get the gist of Marvel's not in love with it, but people are, so they keep doing it almost because it's the character is very popular, and yet it doesn't seem to.
Well, I thought, sure, there's no way that they've got a vampire character like Morbius and a vampire hunter character like Blade. They both got introduced in the 70s. There's no way they didn't cross paths, So,
I mean, it's even more kind of mind-blowing how many people have thrived very well in comics. There's a Survival Street, which is basically a over-the-top apocalyptic version of Sesame Street comic that came out last year.
Okay.
So I love seeing how they can experiment so much with different comics. I mean, I mentioned Snake Plissken from Escape from New York and LA earlier, but I mean, they've even done Vikings and versus matches with different properties. The Transformers versus Terminator one, I totally recommend because it embraces that over the top 80s fun. But then, like you say, with these publishing dates, it does make you wonder who's manning the helm, who's steering the ship, because it's a big, like you say, 20-year gap to forget.
Yeah, but I mean,
they didn't.
Now we have databases, and now we can search. Have these two characters ever met? Oh, yep. But then you'd have to go to I'm sure they have copies of every comic at the ready, but you'd still have to go through every single issue and see, did these two characters meet? So I guess I can see why the writer of this, whatever that first series we talked about, I guess I could see why they wouldn't know if Morbius and Blade had met before.
Like you said, it felt like a merc job.
Yeah, for
It's
sure.
like, and then someone else came in, added their 2 cents, and it didn't necessarily jibe. But it's been great having you on here.
Yeah, likewise.
Given what a buff you are of this, I totally recommend the Who Would Win podcast.
Oh,
they do wacky versus matches, and it's always funny when one of them, one or the other will cheat, and they're like, "You're taking that version of Batman or Judge Dredd from this storyline that is already non-canon. You cannot use that." Well, yes, I'm going to use it just because the Wicca lists it. No, that doesn't count.
I'll have to check that out.
They all their versus matches, like they even do rematches. Just there will be a time where they feel like the judge didn't know as much about said character or was familiar with a movie TV version of said character, not the comic.
Gotcha.
So it is always just funny. Just again, just it reminds you how hindsight is 20.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, keep doing what you do so well. I'm always looking forward to it. Again, your podcast is available on all the platforms, Podbean, Libsyn, and you said off air how you already got some new stuff you're working on. Anything else you're looking forward to?
Yeah, I mean we've been on a hiatus for a while, so we're finally like getting the ball rolling and recording again. We're gonna build up probably 4 or 5 episodes before we start releasing again. That way we just have a little bit of a some episodes banked up and ready to go.
Sweet.
So we're gonna it'll still be a little while before we're releasing episodes. But yeah, I mean, check it out. We've got like 150 previous episodes you can check out. We've been reviewing mostly comic book movies. So yeah. But no, we have fun over there. And yeah, I mean, check out when I'm done with it. Minute of Thieves will be my movie by minute breakdown of Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves.
You guys have so many movie ones on there, and so it's just so cool that that's one of the ones getting the green light.
Yeah.
So. And hopefully you can encourage just again this healthy conversation of have people look up what got translated from script to screen.
Yeah.
In some capacity. I mean, for instance, I've been showing my family the 80s cult movie Enemy Mine, and I decided, you know what? I like showing this cult movie so much, I'm going to start reading all the books it's based on that never got adapted. And it's just eye-opening when you realize, some of the material is adaptable, but if you don't have the right money men or again, just it didn't make any money, you're already dead in the water to where you might as well retitle it or maybe even pull a Saint elsewhere where all this stuff is technically in the same universe, maybe a Valverde for lack of a better comparison, but you can't legally say it is, but it kind of is for those who are friends behind the scenes.
It's like they had they did obviously they made a Conan movie with Schwarzenegger, and then they made a Red Sonja movie with Brigitte Nielsen featuring Arnold Schwarzenegger, but they couldn't legally call him Conan.
You're right. The stuff that people play games with, where you're like, no wonder they're the same character. They just can't, for whatever purpose, use said entity.
At least now with like with the Marvel DC, they mostly own all their own stuff now, so they can they can pretty much use everybody now.
No more headaches.
Yeah.
I used to think it was always only say movie related, but now we're past that even, or music. Like music rights would hold up something.
Oh, sure.
It's like now that's not as big a deal, especially with streaming. Your show or certain edition of a movie may never come to Blu-ray, but we can put it on the streaming uncut. It's the cable TV edit. Streaming counts as TV, kind of. So, well, I welcome your next entry and outlining all the doubled in the details. So.
No, and thanks for having me. This was
anytime.
It was a blast. Let me know if you need me on in the future, I mean, I enjoy.
I promise. We'll do so many other ones, especially when you get to Battlestar.
Oh, okay.
It blew my mind how they're still doing Battlestar comics, but they're doing versus matches between the 70s original and the Redux.
Really?
Yes. I wish I was making this out. It's like Dynamite or Boom, I think that was the right.
That makes sense.
they get
sounds like a Dynamite thing. Yeah.
Very zany. Yeah.
Okay.
Kind of almost like the Punisher versus the Marvel Universe is like it's not canon, but it's kind of like a mirror universe of Star Trek or the What If for Marvel. Where it's
nice. You
can have all these alternate endings and no one gets hurt.
Yeah.
Everyone's happy because
that's fun.
Well, again, it was such a delight here, and I hope you're staying safe out there and keeping a positive self-esteem. I know we're already 4 years into COVID, but it's just I like to think that everyone's slowly healing and getting past all the BS.
For sure. Yeah. Thanks again for having me.
And once again, killer guitar and ATST you got there and geeking out right now.
Right on. Well, you can't see. Maybe if I can. This just arrived as the AT-AT, the big, set that I'm gonna start putting together.
Sweet.
Yeah. I got the Falcon. It's over. You can't see it from over here.
What a piece of junk.
Yeah. You'll do.
Somewhere in some Wikipedia fan fiction, I can see Travis Bow having his own bar in Mos Eisley.
Follow us on the web on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. The podcast is available on Podbean, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Anchor, Apple, and anywhere else podcasts are available. Feel free to review our show and leave comments on any of those sites. Thanks a million for listening. It's a jacked up